Welcome to Spintown, everyone. Today I'm going to review the Death Run update that was released a few days ago over on the Hive. Prior to the update and prior to joining the Death Run update chat on Discord, the one thing I wanted more than anything else was for them to fix the transparency option so that it works in all versions of Minecraft. So when I joined the game for the first time and this happened, I wasn't exactly happy, but I mentioned it on Discord and Miles was nice enough to fix it the same day. So now players like myself, Kaz, and others who play in 1.12 can see where they're jumping while in groups of players. Now onto the stuff that was specifically mentioned in the forum post. In the lobby prior to the race, you can now view all of your personal best times and kill count totals for each map. All of your times from before the update are included, but because they never really track kills for individual maps, everyone will start from scratch with those. So my 332 kills on Expelliarmus won't show up, but thankfully I recorded a video of all my personal bests for each map, and you'll start to see those get uploaded very soon. Overall, I think this is a great change. There's a lot of people who are obsessed with speedruns, so having that information in front of them is very handy. Also, I hope that having a kill count personal best available motivates more players to actively try to be a good death. Another change in the lobby was to the role selector. Now you have the option to buy runner as well as death. It's also a lot cheaper to buy runner as it only costs 50 tokens versus the 1,000 for death. I'm hoping this will cut down on the amount of quit bitches that leave just because they randomly got the death roll when they didn't want it. Another positive change. The biggest changes to the game were to the death lanes and death dealers. On Discord we were told about how they were getting rid of the buttons and planning to use the hotbar for triggering traps. A couple people suggested making it first come first serve, and when I saw what they were intending, I completely agreed with those suggestions. I'd even go as far to say that making the change without first come first serve would have been completely pointless, because overall I don't think it makes it more intuitive, and you pass up on fixing the most common problem death dealers have: button trolling. Before, you could have been waiting at a trap to hit a button and someone else would run in front of you and take it from you. But now, if you're the first one there, when someone else comes along, their hotbar won't even give them the option to trigger the trap. So button trolling or trap trolling is now solved. Originally, the suggestion for first come first serve was shot down and it looked like it was dead in the water. But when the update was released, it turns out they listened. Getting rid of the buttons also allows the deaths to look more directly at the action while deciding when to trigger a trap. This wasn't a huge problem, but there were a few maps that had blind spots when you had to look at the buttons. Overall, getting rid of the buttons and making it first come first serve has been the highlight of the update for me. Great change. That's not the only change in our hotbar though. They've also added the option to teleport to the next or the previous trap. I think this idea has promise and could help new players who don't know the maps all that well, but the current implementation actually makes it harder on deaths. The main problem is that the two arrows used to go to the next and previous traps are right next to the compass. The old system has basically trained older players to scroll one spot off the compass to hit the button, and then go one spot back to use the compass again. Now that muscle memory is causing me and others to accidentally teleport one trap away when we're just trying to activate a trap. I thought I'd get used to scrolling further away each time, but so far I haven't. For people who don't spend a lot of time trying to be a good death, they may not realize just how fast you're using that compass and hotbar at times. In some locations, you can't afford to slow down to make sure you're directly over the correct item. So misclicks will happen, especially when you have to scroll over something you definitely don't want to hit each time you use the compass. What makes this even worse is that being a good death means you need to be aware you are, where all the runners are, and how long it'll take people to get from point A to point B, even when you're not looking at them. When you have one of those misclicks, it can totally throw you off. Even on old maps that I know like the back of my hand, my kill totals weren't nearly as good as they should have been just because of the hotbar layout. When I'm death, it's kind of like having 3 or 4 egg timers running in your head, and a misclick is basically like someone coming by and adding and subtracting time to each one. Fortunately, this problem has an easy fix. I already suggested moving the arrows to the ends of the hotbar like this. This would allow people using the compass to move around exactly as they used to before the update without worrying about misclicks screwing up their game. It would also allow people using the arrows to still only be one spot away from a trap trigger. A second suggestion of having a customizable hotbar was also made. This sounds like it may be more work for the devs, but it would also solve the problem. Now here's another example of a problem I found with the next and previous buttons. Okay, the arrows are fucking pointless with that cooldown. You can't keep up with the people in front. Like, I was spamming it trying to keep up with you and I couldn't. In that clip, I was trying to catch the front runner, but he was running and strafing faster than I could teleport because of the cooldown. It would have taken me a third of the map just to catch him, and that's not really going to make for a good death game. So if a player wants to move around primarily with those tools, he's bound to get owned by a good runner who uses his strafes in bunches. Now, I never really planned to use the next and previous tool, but if these are going to be useful and not a hindrance, they need to be moved in the hotbar, and I'd also suggest having no cooldown. This change has potential, but right now it's the biggest disappointment of the update for me. Other changes include holograms to identify teleport pads, there's an action bar to display your current trap's info, plus the compass now tells you which traps are active and which are in cooldown. These are all nice little changes to make the role a little bit more user-friendly. Unfortunately for me, there is one more change to the death lanes. They got rid of the colored clay that told the runners the status of the traps and replaced it with colored glass. Now, I'm partly colorblind, and telling the difference between the red and green clay was hard at times, but I could do it pretty well. Now the hard part is telling the difference between the green and yellow glass. At a glance, I can't tell them apart at all. The only time I can see a difference is if the colors change in front of me. Then I can faintly see a change in shade. If it's red, it's a lot darker for me than both the other colors, but the green and yellow are so light they look identical. I used to have the same problem on Team PvP servers. If there were like lime and yellow teams, I was screwed. If there were green and red teams, I was also screwed. So yeah, to say the least, I'm not a fan of this change, but I do realize it won't affect most players. Now for the cosmetic changes. I won't spend too much time with these since I'm not a huge fan of cosmetic items. They can be neat, but I generally concern myself with things that affect gameplay. Being able to change your strafe color is kind of cool, and I've already changed mine to blue. The victory aura seems like a very minor thing, but I'm sure some people will like it. If you place in the top 3 and beat your previous record, your podium NPC will have a hologram displaying your best time. That's kind of cool, but they were also broadcasting that in chat, and that's just too spammy for me. I honestly don't care about someone else getting their personal best, so I don't want to see it in my chat. There's also a new achievement for improving a personal best in kills. When you look at their other achievements, adding this one just kind of makes sense. Now on to the bug fixes. Before this update, your death victories weren't being recorded. That's now fixed. Unfortunately, the one map you had a decent shot at getting a victory on was nerfed, and I don't really see myself being able to win again unless there's 5 to 7 runners in the game who all happen to be noobs. But I'll talk more about that later this week when I review the 3 new maps. So it's a good change, but kind of pointless unless they actually give us a chance to win by lowering the primary timer to 4 minutes. Or doing as another player suggested and classifying each map into 3 different types: 4-minute maps, 3.5-minute maps, and 3-minute maps. So really short, easy maps like Sonic and School could have a 3-minute primary timer, while longer, harder maps like Riviera and Expelliarmus could have a 4-minute timer. Victories would still be extremely rare for deaths. It would also still give newer players plenty of time to play a map because of the 90-second secondary timer, but at least deaths would feel like they have a chance to win. It would also make that bug fix not so pointless. Another change they made was having the giant's damage radius. To me, that was a bad bug fix. I understand the desire to make it a little smaller, but even though it's hard to get around, people need to remember it's a one-time use trap, so it should be really hard to avoid since death will no longer get to use it. If you were going to shrink the kill radius, I wouldn't have went much smaller than, let's say, 8, just to test it out for a while, because taking that much away, you probably just made the trap worthless. Keep in mind the trap wasn't impossible to get by either. Since it works on delay, it's very possible to sneak by with a double or sometimes a single strafe. A positive fix they included was making players no longer stay on fire when they die to flaming arrows. I don't think anyone would argue this wasn't needed. There were a couple other fixes mentioned, but honestly they aren't things I ever experienced, so I won't talk about them. I do know there was supposed to be a lot of bug fixes to older maps as well, but with 3 new maps to pick from at the moment, it's kind of hard for me to check out all the old stuff, so I'll probably do another video about that in a month or 2. Well, that's about it for the changes. They're still tweaking some things, so please report any bugs you find on the forums. Overall, I think they did a great job with this update, but if they don't make an adjustment to the hotbar, death will become a less fun role for me, despite the fact that most of the update was positive. Unlike the last Death Run update, I feel they mostly listened to the community this time. Hopefully they continue to do that. Thanks for watching today's video. If you didn't get enough Spintown for today, you can click on this annotation right here to watch another recent video. Remember, there's a brand new video here every single Monday, so until then, spin out.